Hey, it's Conrad Thompson, and you're listening to Something to Wrestle With. Bruce Pritchard. Bruce, how are you, man?
Yeah, actually, it's tonight. Since I saw Piff last night, and it was an excellent show. I hardly I recommend it. But if you're watching this, you know that I'm not really in Vegas right now because we're doing this. But I would have seen Piff, and I know that it would have been a great show. But tonight it would be with my good, dear, close personal friend ZZ Top. But yeah, Piff the fucking Magic Dragon, damn right. And my good friend Ron White, and of course, Aerosmith. I added another one in there for Monday too. You can go see Absinthe, I guess.
Wait. So you're just laying out of work next week too? Is that the deal? I got to get that Bruce Pritchard work schedule. Feels like you got like 17 weeks of vacation.
Is that right? You want to play that game, do you?
I do not. I'm busting balls. That's what we do around here. And we are also excited to be talking about Armageddon 2002.
I don't think I was there.
Huh?
I don't think I was there.
Well, thanks everybody for tuning in for Something to Wrestle Bruce Pritchard.
Bruce, it's with Bruce Pritchard. Okay, yeah. Thanks everybody. I'll see you next week. You want to do the ads real quick?
No, I mean, I think we'll
knock them out and then we'll say goodbye because that way they get a full show.
Well, we plugged Piff and ZZ Top and all that. I mean, I figure those are our ads, right?
Well, they're my ads.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
Yeah, okay.
This is a big show that we're going to be talking about today because there's so much going on here. 20 years ago, the company is very much in a state of, maybe transition. ECW's gone, WCW's gone. We've done the invasion angle a year before. We're coming off Survivor Series 02, where Shawn Michaels is the man. He wins the first ever Elimination Chamber.
In his in his doo-doo trunks.
And then doo-doo brown tights, yeah. And then you can see right there, if you're watching along on YouTube, Big Show becomes the guy who beats Brock Lesnar in Brock's first televised loss. We've talked about this before. Maybe once upon a time that was supposed to be Hulk Hogan. Hulk didn't want to do the job the second time around. So instead of having Brock beat Hogan, we had Big Show beat Hogan and Paul Heyman do what Paul Heyman does. We covered that Survivor Series episode way back when on episode 74. It's available in the archives if you'd like to hear more. But maybe the biggest story coming out of that show is that Scott Steiner is now with the company. And then we're going to turn that into a whole storyline of, is he going to Raw or is he going to SmackDown? Kind of the first big free agent to come into the company since we did the brand split.
No, he wasn't free. It costs money.
I like when you're in this kind of mood. This is going to be fun.
Yeah.
The Raw after Survivor Series, Meltzer would refer to as a weird show with almost no wrestling. It starts with Bischoff confronting Flair about Triple H not being there. Of course, as a reminder, Triple H got frog splashed on the throat the night before, and he was hurting for certain. But later in the show, they would claim that Triple H is on his way, and he would be on the show. Of course, he was in the building the whole time, but never appeared on camera. And Meltzer would write, maybe Vince was so afraid that Triple H is the only draw on the show and really brought the idea that if people didn't think he'd be there, they'd tune out. Speaking of Flair, it really is amazing the story that you have one of the greatest promo men in the history of wrestling, but they don't want him doing promos. But when he does them, they don't want him saying Ric Flair promos. They don't want him doing any of the screaming or strutting or wooing or anything. Let's talk about that for a minute because Bruce, we've often heard Rick say on his podcast that Vince didn't like his promos. 80s heels don't draw. Stop doing all that shit. That sort of thing. Do you think that Vince maybe felt like Rick wasn't able to adapt to the modern era, or that old style classic Ric Flair promo didn't work anymore in this era?
I don't think he was a big fan of Rick's promos by any stretch of the imagination, but I also in this era with Rick being the owner and the general manager, whatever the hell it was trying to present Rick in a different way, trying to present a different side of him and a business side of him, and not to be that character that he had been for all those years as a performer. We're looking for a different side of him to have him grow.
Did you just say I don't think Vince was a fan of Ric Flair's promos by any stretch of the imagination?
Yeah, he wasn't.
What was he a fan of Rick's? Like, I'm just trying to figure out if he brings him over, makes the big pomp and circumstance, throws him into the mix, makes him the world champ. He doesn't like the promos. He was a big fan of the work, or he just thought, hey, this was a big attraction. It's a coup for us.
I think that he was. I think that he was a fan of Ric Flair, the person, especially at the time, and he was a fan of the work, and he was a fan of Rick's. That makes any sense. But I think that when you, especially in 2002, we're talking 10 years later, in 2002, he wasn't a fan of that. It wasn't the Ric Flair that he wanted, that he felt that he needed in that position. To have your general manager, have your owner go out there, every week and take their pants off and strut around and yell and scream where you can't understand them wasn't something that he wanted in that position.
Let's
Talking 2002.
right. I understand. Here in 2002, Shawn Michaels comes out for what Meltzer would call one of the more unintentionally funny but also sad promos. He says the poor guy died out there. The idea is he says he's not going to ramble on with a long, boring promo, but then he does that for about 15 minutes. And he says he was a shell of what he once was, and he teased he was going to retire without ever defending the belt. And Meltzer would say he was basically saying he was washed up, which doesn't really sound great when you're standing there with the belt. RVD and Bischoff come out. Meltzer didn't think they could save it. And Bischoff is asking if he lost his smile. Again, remember now, this is 15 years later. Is this too inside baseball? Were we setting Shawn up to fail here with this type of promo? Should it have been? Did people want to see a different Shawn after he comes back and wins the belt like this?
I think the audience wanted to see, the triumphant Shawn. Here he came back when we didn't expect him to come back as a fan, as promotion, or anything else. And he tells us, I'm not what I used to be. I'm this and that. Nobody wants to hear that. They want to hear what you're going to do, man. I want that guy that I used to love. I know that you're not the same guy that was there in 1995, 1997, whatever it was. I know you're not that same guy, but at least give me hope. At least tell me that, by God, I'm going to go back. I'm going to dust the boots off. I'm going to do whatever the hell it is, versus saying, I'm the shits. Right. I'm always going to be the shits. I'm just not what I used to be, which is not really what the audience wants to hear from them.
Let's talk about the next segment here on the show. This sets up Bischoff basically saying something like, you're offended by the necrophilia because you're religious. Again, we're still talking about Katie Vick. And Shawn responds, no, I'm offended because I'm a wrestling fan. And Meltzer says they're so stuck on the internet because they thought it would get a pop, but it just got groans, particularly because Michaels can't deliver a comedic line, and partially because it's not what they want wrestling to be. Are we too inside baseball here with things like lost your smile and mentioning the Katie Vick stuff and all of that? I mean, Shawn's even saying, I'm mad at what Raw has become. Like, that feels, I don't know, odd. It doesn't feel like Vince McMahon normally embraces, well, this show's not as good as it used to be. And all the inside baseball references that maybe folks had forgotten about by this point.
All right. They'll never forget about Katie Vick, by God. Wish they would. Go back in time and erase that one, folks. But, hey, look, lost your smile was part of Shawn's legacy, and that was something that had been used a lot during the time that Shawn competed. After Shawn said it, that was fodder. The Katie Vick stuff and the show itself, I'm just not a big fan of saying, hey, yeah, this really sucks, or this isn't what it used to be. It makes people think, hey, maybe it isn't. And it was just a different approach and different way. But I don't think that, again, when you tell me that, why don't I want to stick around?
Yeah.
If maybe I'm feeling that way, but I don't know how to express it. Then my favorite star expresses it. Then I go, maybe he's right. And that gives me ammunition now to defend. Well, maybe I don't want to watch anymore. Not good, in my opinion.
Let's talk about the Dudley boys. They're put back together here, but they briefly tried a little split. Of course, we know they're going to come back together for Survivor Series. Folks get really excited about that because they're no longer Devon the preacher and all this silly stuff. But it doesn't feel as if they get the same big pop they had before the split. Did that split do damage to them in this era, do you think? In hindsight, was it a mistake? I mean, clearly things like this are worth a try, but the return excitement felt like it was a one-off.
I think that, first of all, they weren't as big as they were when they first came in, when they split, which was part of the reason for the split. So you're not going to get back to that by just putting it back together, because it wasn't as big as it once was when they were together. So when you look at it that way, it's, you want to try something. You like both guys, and it was an experiment. It was a failed experiment, because I don't think that either guy, when you look at Bubba's career in particular at that time, Bubba had only been a tag team. I think both of them had only ever been in a tag team. And that's something that people forget a lot of times, man. They'll watch a tag team. They'll fall in love with the tag team. Very seldom can both guys come out of that tag team as strong single competitors, because working in a tag team is different than being by yourself, being an individual, and being able to go out and work a match, the entire match, without having that safety net of tagging somebody out. So for the Dudleys, I think that they were still, trying to find their way. And they had only been in a tag team pretty much their entire career. So now working singles is a different psychology. It's an entirely different way of thinking about a match and thinking about your performance, because it's all on you. You don't have a partner to play off of. And that's what happens. Unfortunately, a lot of times you have two strong personalities. When you split them, it splits the personality sometimes. And, Marty Jannetty didn't take off as a tag team guy. We tried with Legion of Doom, splitting them. Didn't work. If you were to split Ricky and Robert, didn't work. Ricky did okay for a run there a little bit, but man, people wanted to see the tag team as a unit. So I don't know that, it didn't work. It didn't work for Bubba either. I think later on in Bubba's career, when Bubba was forced to be a single, I think Bubba did a hell of a job as a single in TNA and what have you. I thought the Bully Ray stuff worked. But yeah, here it just wasn't. They didn't want to see him as singles, but they weren't as hot as they were coming in when we split them.
Stacy Keebler is still trying to promote "I Love My Testicles" T-shirts and help Test. Boy, we're trying what we can with Test.
Well, she did. They were an item. She did love her Test.
Sean Morley shows up on Raw, and Bischoff talks about how glad he was to have a porn star like Val Venus on the show. Morley said that wasn't his name, and he wasn't a porn star. We're going to change Morley to Chief Morley, but let's be honest, people still have a soft spot for Val Venus, do they not?
Hello, ladies.
Yeah.
One of the strongest characters that people remember is Val Venus. Unfortunately, everything that we said about Val Venus day one came to fruition. That a porn star character is not something that has longevity, is not something that you're going to be able to do for years and years and years down the road. And unfortunately, that came true. We tried to reinvent him with, what was it? With Godfather and Lisa and Stevie. We tried to do that. And Sean Morley is an entertaining guy in and of himself, but I think people just, when they looked at him, they saw Val Venus, and that was
Yeah.
it.
Well, I mean, I think there's, I mean, that happens in Hollywood too, right? Where the audience starts to, like, I imagine James Gandolfini, a lot of people would have had trouble seeing him as anything other than Tony Soprano at some point, right?
Exactly. I think you get typecast in a character, and that's how the audience sees you.
Shawn Michaels and Rob Van Dam is something that a lot of folks think is going to be a big time match, because Rob Van Dam wins a 3-way over Booker and Chris Jericho to win a match against Shawn Michaels. Was there, I've always thought that '02 was the year, baby, to pull the trigger on RVD. We know it happens, but it happens like 4 years later. Was it ever seriously discussed? Did you think Rob Van Dam was ready in '02? Did Vince think Rob Van Dam was ready in '02?
I think that we were ready to try. I think we were ready to try with Rob. There, Rob was the guy from ECW that still had some steam, and that the audience, that he was new to WWE, and Rob was unique. Rob was one of those guys that stood out of the pack, and looking at it, yeah, why not? Let's try something with Rob. And I don't know that Rob had really adapted yet to being able to adapt to the style and adapt to his new surroundings yet. But definitely Rob was discussed as one of the guys that, could he be the guy?
I just love Rob Van Dam in this era and can't help but think, what if the show comes out, it doesn't get a strong rating? Meltzer's going to be critical, saying that, man, they're looking for fresh ideas. Do you remember '02 being a time in particular where you guys were sort of struggling?
I think that, the answer is yes. I think it was a time where we had a lot of talent, but I don't know that the talent were in the right places. And there was a sense of trying new, getting to the point of how do you present this new talent? And, they're not all going to be hits by anybody's barometers. And it was a time of experimentation. It was a time of, let's see if the audience wants this, and if they do, then let's give it to them. But how much? What is that appetite? How much are they going to eat? So it was a challenging time because you had so much new, and you were trying new things. You didn't have Austin, you didn't have Rock, and it was challenging.
It's so challenging that even CNN is doing a story covering the WWE's business decline, which, by the way, over the week, I know we'll talk about current stuff, but Darren Ravel showed a little chart and graph about WWE stock the last 6 months relative to a bunch of other content creators. WWE stock looks like this, and everybody else looks like this. It's pretty crazy to think this content that WWE has and how their business model has really changed. Is that just the evolution of the business, Bruce? I mean, when you first got in, it was mostly about ticket sales. It was becoming about pay-per-view. Licensing took on a new thing. International started to grow. Way back when, Vince was talking about a network, which we thought back then probably meant like a cable TV channel. But this thing has just continued to evolve, and the ways you make money in wrestling now are probably a stark contrast from the way that you were making, '02 or even '87, right?
The business continues to evolve, and it always has. When you go back and you look at the origins, it was a cottage industry. It was a territorial industry where everybody had their own fiefdom, if you will. And as the business grows, the merchandising money was how many pictures could a promoter sell at a live event.
Right.
That was your merchandising. T-shirts were not a thing until the '80s, pretty much. There was a guy, Jim Melby and Norman Keitzer in Minnesota, who had deals with certain talent, mainly AWA talent. They had a Mr. X, Dick Byers, Mad Dog Vachon, but a couple of those guys that they would sell shirts in their magazines. And that was a big deal because you just couldn't find wrestling shirts.
Yeah.
Talent in the 70s. They didn't exist. And then the 80s, I remember the first one that we did. Well, the first one we did was the Two Babies Wrestling, and that was just locally. But of a talent perspective, was of Jim Cornette, a caricature of Jim Cornette with the tennis racket, and it had the Ghostbusters,
Yes.
sign over it. That was the first big hot seller. And then from there, we went on to Rock and Roll Express. And then I got into the t-shirt business and started doing everything on everybody. But it was, it was just a different time. So you made money from merchandising. You made TV wasn't really a moneymaker for anybody. TV was just something that you bartered with your local broadcaster to put your show on the air to promote your live events. That's where you made your money. So you would try and get a TV station to come in, pick up the production costs, shoot the show, whether you did it in a studio or at an arena, whatever, but let the TV station pay for those costs of producing the television show. And that show was then used as a 1 hour or 2 hour commercial, whatever it was, to promote your live events. So you weren't making money off TV. That wasn't a thing. And you had most promoters had one tape, either 1 inch or 2 inch tape. And they would bicycle that tape around the territory. So that same tape was their master. And then the next week, when it came time to record a new show, they recorded on that same tape because they didn't save it. They thought there was no value in saving it.
Right.
And that's why when you look back, the rare finds of people having old shows, when VCRs came in, thank God there were people that recorded them on VCRs and kept them, because the promoters weren't. The guys producing the show weren't.
Right.
And, Fritz and Paul actually individually, independent of one another, but they were some of the first promoters to try to syndicate their television show internationally. And what they would do is what we did in Houston was we produced a separate tape called Best of Texas Wrestling. There was a compilation tape of our shows. And it was some of the stuff that we didn't show locally. It was the main events, that we were doing for the live events that you didn't show locally on your TV show. We would put those on there for international to get our name out there and to promote bigger stars. But it wasn't like, at least for Houston, it wasn't like, oh, hey, we're going to go over and run in Israel. Fritz did and did very well. But for us, it was, no, man, they're paying us. They're paying us, and they're actually going to make videotapes of these shows and sell them. We're going to get like $1 per tape or something like that. I don't know what the deal was, but that was the thinking, and that's how they made, another way that they made money. And then it grew, and Vince changed the way that the business was done, in that instead of paying to be on a local station, that local station then began to pay us. Amazing. And so you're making money off of that.
It's amazing to think about the evolution of the business, and it's just going to continue to evolve. And maybe that's why we all pay such close attention to the business end of it. Let's talk about some creative, though. The night after Raw, of course, we're doing these SmackDown tapings in Hartford. Paul Heyman's going to come out and say he put in Lesnar's contract a no rematch clause, which, of course, is a storyline device. Lesnar jumps out of the crowd and attacks Paul and Big Show, and that leads to Lesnar being suspended. Is this really because, as you recall, Lesnar was injured at the time and needed a little time off?
Yeah, I believe so. I don't really remember specifically, but I think Brock was dealing with some issues.
I think at the exact same time, The Undertaker is out awaiting the birth of a child, and he's also getting some elbow and lower back issues worked out as well. So we've got some of our big stars on the shelf, so we're trying to make some new stars, including John Cena. He's going to be put out with Bull Buchanan, or B Squared, and this is maybe the first chance that John has to try to get over. I think most people would have taken a look at this rapping gimmick and the Bull Buchanan pairing and all that and think, and this is going to be tough. But John Cena does it, man. And one of the first early steps in that direction is a rap battle between Cena and Rikishi with Taz in the middle of it. Cena and B Squared are going to attack Rikishi during it. Taz tries to break it up. He gets punched by Cena. He doesn't take a bump and ends up putting the Taz mission on Cena and dancing with Rikishi. Yes, Taz was dancing with Rikishi. Any pushback from Taz? This is the guy who took his character.
Oh, I'm sure. Oh my God. Yeah. Hey Taz, when you go to the ring, brother, why the fuck do I gotta go to the ring? On the announce tables down there, Taz. Yeah, everything was pushed back from Taz. But you go back and look. Yeah, there were experts in the field. You will kill him if you put a rap gimmick on him. His career is over. A lot of people thought that the career of John Cena ended the day that we put the rap thing on him. There are others.
So Paul Heyman wasn't a fan of that.
Told me it would kill him.
Yeah.
Said that he's dead in the water if you put that on him. And I think he did all right. But, God, I forgot about Bull Buchanan. And that was a time, here's a big guy that sweetheart. I mean, a great guy and had the size, didn't necessarily have the charisma, but he definitely had the size and the wherewithal and the right attitude to do, big things in this business. And so for John, it was the right thing. And it gave Bull a little bit of personality there in the beginning.
Well, let's talk about Linda McMahon. She's going to be getting on an investors call here and try to put a little spin on the company's first ever money losing quarter without the losses of the XFL. This is the first money losing quarter since 1997. The company itself loses money, but the wrestling department, according to Linda, made $2.5 million in profit during the quarter. And a lot of that is based on just where the numbers are. The average attendance from November of 01 to November of 02, attendance is down 44.3%. Ticket prices are higher, so gates are falling, but not at the same rate. But still, the gates are down 35.2%. We haven't sold out any house shows in the month of November of 02 here. And the Raw rating is down 20.4%. The SmackDown rating is 13.9%. Did you guys recognize it was just time for a change?
Yes. Yeah, it was. Because, first of all, when you look at your talent base and who you have, what you had, what you've lost, and then add on top of that, the injuries and everything adding up. It was time, you're looking, what's the next big thing? Who's right. The next big thing? Where are they? And you're taking risk on guys in their 20s, and you have to. I mean, you're looking at Brock, you're looking at Cena, you're looking at Batista, you're looking at these type of guys as Randy Orton. Come on, hurry up. Not sure that we had the time to get people over. So, it was a very, very challenging time. And you're looking at it. This was during a time too, you have them all the time anyway. But when we were looking at talent in our developmental system and saying, John Cena is a great example. Let's bring this guy up. He's not ready.
Right.
Okay. Let's bring Brock up. He's not ready. Let's bring Batista up. He's not ready. Randy Orton. He's not ready. When are they going to be ready? Oh, they need another couple years. Don't have another couple years. They're going to learn on the job. And regardless, as we are going through this process, every single talent you bring up from development, then now everywhere in between, they still have to adapt to a completely different audience, a different way of doing television, a completely whole different business model than what they have in development. So it became, we're like, we're bringing them up. You're losing them. Congratulations, man. They're coming up and they're going to sink or swim. And it was on the job training. So, that was what we had to do with talent. And that was something that, would become the norm of anybody that you saw potential in. They were never ready. They're never ready to come up. But you've got to roll the dice and you've got to say, come on up, kids, and let's teach you while you're here.
So listen, man, let's talk a little bit about where we are here within the company. Meltzer would say that this is the worst month of WWE house show attendance since December of 95. And that's 1 month after Bret Hart ended the reign of Kevin Nash. And of course, Meltzer wants to remind everybody that in his opinion, Kevin Nash was the worst drawing champion in WWE history. And perhaps even more sobering, Meltzer would say, is that the attendance level of WCW in February of 2000, exactly 1 year before the company went out of business, was still higher than the level is here. And that to me is like, wow, that's just something that's hard for me to wrap my head around. How is Vince handling this? I know that you've often said on the program that he believed in the old, never let them see you sweat. Is he sweating visibly here? Is he selling that business is taking a dip at all?
I don't know, selling, sweating, no. Looking at the business and being concerned and saying, what the hell are we going to do to turn it around? Yes.
Yeah.
Because, the business wasn't good, and looking at different things and different factors as to why it isn't good. And why is it bad? Well, the new gas station opened down the street. You can use all kinds of excuses. But yeah, definitely looking at what are we going to change? How are we going to address this? And how, what needs to be addressed to make the changes? Is it a talent issue? Is it a television creative issue? Is it, what we're doing with it? Is it business? Where are we booking these events? Why are we booking these events here? All the above. So there's not one simple magic bullet that's going to make it change. It's a combination of a lot of things, and you've got to look at every aspect of your business for that answer.
Meltzer would report this, and this stuck out like a sore thumb, so I hope you remember this. Maybe you do. Quote, at one of the booking meetings last week, Vince got up and declared that Shock TV is dead, saying it's clear it doesn't work anymore. This is not too terribly long after, as we've discussed earlier, some of the other silly ideas like Katie Vick. Shock TV is dead. Do you remember Vince having that edict?
Oh, I remember that because that was that meeting that Dave was there, that Dave Meltzer was there. Yeah, I remember that. And Dave was right there and throwing in all of his creative ideas and telling us how to run the business. And Vince said, God damn, you're right, Dave. You're a genius. God, look at your track record of running and actually conducting a business that's profitable in this same avenue and in this same space. Yeah, I remember that.
I mean, listen, here you've said before that
Shock TV was over. It was dead. It was I don't know, and it wasn't Shock TV. It was Crash TV.
Yeah.
And it was, a different way of doing things. And all too often, if you find something that works, we're all guilty of this.
Wear it out.
Wear it the fuck out, man.
Yes.
And we were very guilty of that. My God, Crash TV, it's Crash TV, and you crash TV until you crash into the wall.
Yeah.
And, as Chavo Guerrero used to say, in moderation, man, in moderation, you just don't. Anyway, it's the same thing. It's the same thing with creative. It's the same thing with TV and live events. Everything you do, moderation, man. If you just feed them the same shit, shove it down their throat, they're not gonna eat it. But if you can give them a little bit, start to shove it down their throat, then help them, a little bit. Pull it back and give them a drink to help get that down. So yeah, Crash TV, just doing it that way. What wasn't the only way? You needed to change the delivery system. You needed to change how we were telling our stories. I remember that because Dave, he sat right next to me.
Please stop.
God, his ideas were amazing. He's so great.
Bruce, you're ruining the show with this. Come on now.
I'm not ruining the show. I'm
Well,
simply stating. I'm simply
I
bringing
mean,
up things that.
you've said before, well, that's the meeting where he said, all right, attitude. That's what Shawn Michaels was showing. So I thought this may have been a similar type conversation or circumstance. And
No.
instead, you made it a F. Dave Meltzer.
Well, no, because he said, did he not say that there was a meeting? Vince stood up and said, "Shock TV's dead."
Well, yeah, but you just said, okay, it was Crash TV, but pretty much that was accurate. What the fuck?
No, it wasn't accurate. I'm saying
Okay.
that we were looking at Crash TV and how we were doing it. He's making it sound like Vince stood up in a meeting and, by God, no. I said that must have been the one he was at because he knows everything.
All righty. Okay, we get it. India. Everybody hated it going to India. I mean, let's just talk about it. The rides were long. The wrestlers were shocked at the living conditions of the people here. And more importantly, a ton of them got very sick. Storm and Regal were so sick they couldn't work that night of the tour. And it wound up almost killing William Regal. People have been trying to make a run of India and present professional wrestling in India for a long, long time. It is an emerging market, I guess, is the corporate speak these days. But man, some of the talent did not have the best time. What do you remember about Regal and this tour from hell here?
Horrible. Regal and Booker T, I think, both got very, very sick. I remember Booker, man, laying on a table in the hallway, just doubled over in pain. It's like, I've never been this sick. We got to go. Regal got a parasite or something that just tore his system up. So he was very, very sick. And the crazy thing about it is one of the places where I bonded with Darren, with Steve Regal, was eating Indian food all the time in Stanford when he was up there. We had a great little spot right by the office, and we loved our Indian food. I had Indian food last night, but yeah, India is a tricky place. There are, what I'll never forget about going to India is going from the airport to the hotel, and the hotel's like this 5-star, just beautiful hotel. And all the way to the airport, you would see lining the street, people sleeping in the street, and they would sleep with their head on the curb and their feet out into the street. And we're talking probably 10 miles at least of, that's all you saw on each side of the street. So it's bizarre. It's a whole completely different world, on the other side of the world. And the poverty was horrible. The dead animals in the street, the children running around naked, and people sleeping in the streets and having no place really to live. It was, it was an experience, definitely. And then you get into the hotel and you think you're in the finest hotel in New York City. The food's amazing. Everything's spotless and gorgeous. But then you leave the confines of that and you go out, a minute from the hotel, and you're back into this poverty. And the trick is you can't drink the water. So you brush your teeth with bottled water. You keep your mouth shut when you take a shower. Try not to breathe in the water, get it up your nose when you take a shower and things like that. That's what got me. The last day I was there, and I know when I did it. I know when it happened, was at the shower at the airport. And yeah, you just have to be really careful. And knowing, Regal, Booker, on the other hand, Booker very picky about what he eats, but knowing Regal, he was probably like, oh God, let me have some Indian food. I love this. And the food was great there, but you just didn't always know. And so that was definitely a place where you packed your protein bars and you lived on them for a few days.
And bottled water.
But, You had to be very careful about your bottled water because they would rebottle water and you really didn't know the source a lot of times. You had to make sure that when you open that you got the click.
I got you.
Okay. Because they would just fill up water bottles
Right.
with purified water or what have you that wasn't actually purified.
Speaking of water, we would see on the show here Jericho and Christian come out of the shower surrounded by a bunch of faces. I know the heels and baby faces share the same shower and call them losers. Well, somewhere in here, the Dudleys steal their bags with their clothes in them and won't give them back. Christian notes that he's worried about the shrinkage of his little general. And eventually the Dudleys are in the ring throwing their clothes around. And finally, they reach into one of the bags and pull out a jar that says ass cream. Ryan's having a good time with this, is he not? Ass cream.
You don't have ass cream in your bag?
I do not. I've actually never seen ass cream. Where would
You
one?
You saw it right there.
I mean, in real life. I mean, I see the picture here, but I've never actually seen it down at the Walgreens.
CVS has an exclusive on it.
Got it. I was going to ask where it came from, but now I know. You look at CVS for your ass cream. What would one need ass cream for, in theory, Bruce?
Your ass.
But what purpose would it serve?
To make it creamy.
I knew you were going to say that. I hate you so much.
Why? Why got hate, man? I'm a loving. I'm in a great mood.
Oh yeah, listen. Let's talk about something that I was pretty fired up about. Shawn Michaels and Rob Van Dam. They go to a no contest in just under 9 minutes. Meltzer would say to people who were expecting some sort of dream match, this was disappointing. It's Shawn's first match on Raw in 5 years. It's against who a lot of people think could be one of the heir apparents. He could be one of the next big top guys, but it doesn't happen. Triple H is going to come out and give Rob Van Dam a pedigree on the floor. He and Michaels trade blows in the ring until Triple H lays him out with a backbreaker on the chair. So we didn't really get the dream match. Rob Van Dam is sort of an afterthought. He's in the background for this Shawn Michaels, Hunter Hearst Helmsley thing. Any pushback?
Why would you think it was a dream match?
Well, because it was. I mean, I was pretty fired up about it. I had wanted to see that since 1997.
Yeah, I think that, and again, looking at it through completely different lens, it was a Styles clash. It was not an AJ Styles clash where he does live gimmick and does thing, but it was a clash of styles that I didn't think would work. I really didn't. Rob needs a certain type of opponent. I think Shawn could work with a broomstick, but I think that Rob definitely wasn't a broomstick. And Rob's heavy. Rob is thick, man. Rob is solid. And what he does very well. But I just thought, beforehand and after seeing it, it was ugly. It got hit with an ugly stick. And, it just was two guys that didn't mesh, not meshing for several minutes. So I guess I could see the allure of, I want to see these guys go. Obviously, so did we in some form or fashion. But I kind of argued, man, this needs to be laid out in a different way because, Rob needs to do his shit. Shawn, it just didn't gel. It didn't gel. Obviously, it didn't gel.
It's been said over the years, and I'm not there. What do I know? That Shawn and Hunter were maybe not big fans of Rob Van Dam's work. Was that accurate?
No, they actually both were big fans of Rob and were two of the proponents that, wanted to get Rob into the mix. So hence the reason that we even did the match. But I think that once they, look, a lot of the luster came off when Rob came off the top on Hunter's throat. Accident. Rob didn't mean to do that. And that was just a freak accident. That was in no way, one clumsy. It was just an accident is all it was. Right. But I think people looked at that. Oh, he's dangerous. And that was the reputation that Van Dam had. That he was dangerous. I never thought Rob was dangerous. I thought Rob was snug. Rob would hit you.
Right.
Okay. And Rob was snug. I don't think that anything that Rob ever did was dangerous to his opponents. I could be wrong. I was never in the ring with him. But, in hurting Hunter, yeah, that was definitely, oh God, he's dangerous. Um, I just don't share that same opinion of Rob. And I do know that, going back in time, that there was a time that they were looking for, hey, we need opponents. Van Dam, he's new, he's hot. Let's try and go with Van Dam.
Well, we're not going to try and go with DDP. DDP is going to be released from his contract, and Meltzer would have this to say. His contract specified that after an injury, if he was unable to return to the ring in 5 months, the contract would be terminated. The doctors that treated him told both he and the WWE that he was risking paralysis because of his neck injury if he ever took a bad bump. As Page had noted many times, he was still planning on returning, but McMahon and Ross made the call for him, saying they wouldn't let him return because of the risks. And of course, we know DDP does make small returns to the WWE and works some main event programs with TNA. But did you think this was the end of the line for DDP, and were you disappointed?
Unfortunately, yeah. I don't know. You go through this business, and now going on 50 years, and it's like you have, quote, career injury or career ending injuries, that some are career ending and some are guys can come back from it. You always hope that they can come back from it, but you always don't want to see it.
Yeah.
And depending upon the injury, it's like with Steve Austin. Man, I knew Steve's injury and I didn't want him to come back from it
Right.
because it wasn't worth it. It just wasn't worth the other side. And so for Paige, I think it was, man, it's not worth it. And I think Dallas has done all right for himself, on the other side.
Yeah.
And the other thing about, the blessing in that is that Dallas was able to teach other people
Yes.
how to work through injuries and how to take care of their bodies along the way. And to me, that is, the best thing that came out of it. And Dallas Page is such a positive person
Yes.
in general, just as a human being. From the first time I ever met him at Norma Jean's, I think it was, to today, the guy, his attitude has never changed. He's the most positive guy in the room, and will always look for the silver lining. And he doesn't give up on people, and he didn't give up on himself. So you knew he was going to be okay. It's just you don't want his career to end on your watch.
Yeah, that's fair. Taz is going to miss an episode of SmackDown in Colombia. He has an emergency family issue at the last minute, and it's determined that Ernest the Cat Miller is going to be doing commentary. And boy, Meltzer did not think it went well. Quote, he may end up better on the show because they'll likely have to redo most of the commentary in studio later. But those who heard the live feed said he was brutal for the first half of the show. Then he lost his voice. He had no idea of any of the storylines or characters. And during every commercial break, Michael Cole had to prep him on everything. As a reminder, this is the SmackDown for Thanksgiving, which is traditionally the lowest rated SmackDown of the year. So maybe it's not that big of a deal, but still, it's less than ideal to have one of your guys out and we're just going to throw somebody right into the fire. What do you remember about this experiment with the cat?
I think the cat was liked by everybody. Yeah, another guy that was a terrific human being. And man, you talk to Ernest just in general. He's
Yes.
quick as can be and funny and witty. But man, you put Brad Armstrong, most entertaining, funniest, wittiest guy in the world, couldn't do commentary, couldn't do play-by-play, couldn't do color. Arn Anderson, shits.
Yeah.
The cat, shits.
Yeah.
But he was great, all great backstage, all great in real life. But man, you put a microphone and a headset in front of them, and they can't do it. They just cannot do it. And we learned, you're in an emergency. Let's try something. What about Ernest? And maybe he could be a future guy. Maybe he could be somebody that could step into that spot and be just fine. But wasn't good. Wasn't good at all.
Fabulous Moolah shows up at this taping. It's in Columbia where she lives. And when she's there, Stephanie asks if she'd like to wrestle, and she agrees to. I think she's like 79 years old here. You guys love using Moolah when you get an opportunity here. Do you know it?
Absolutely. And she loved, she loved working. She loved coming in and doing whatever it is that we wanted her to do. But yeah, Moolah wanted to work every single day if she could. She loved it. She just loved being out there, and she loved being in front of an audience, and she loved being in the ring, performing.
Well, they announced it's Moolah versus Big Show for the title. Yep, that's a thing.
Feel sorry for Big Show because Moolah whipped his ass. It was.
Of course, the match never took place. Show goes for a choke slam. Lesnar hits the ring, and Lesnar winds up F5ing Big Show through the announcer's table to end the show. Some other news and notes from this era is Kurt Angle is going to have his knee scoped after Armageddon. And since there's 5 weeks between the two shows, he might be able to recover quick enough and not miss a major show. Are you leaning on the guys too hard here, or is this just the nature of the business, especially with the way the pay was back then? I mean,
it's the nature of the business.
Yeah.
It's look, you got paid when you worked. And even if you had, your downside guarantee, if that was healthy, you still wanted to out earn. You still wanted to do more than that. So the more you worked, the more you made.
Right.
So yeah, nobody wanted to be out for any length of time. And we had some studs that just, I'll tape it up. I'll be fine.
Right. Well, somebody who is thinking about taping it up, or you guys are hoping is Stone Cold Steve Austin. We've talked about how business is down. We know that he walked out earlier in the year. A lot of people think, man, this could be the magic bullet. I know JR had been working on it. How hard was Vince McMahon working to get Steve Austin back here? Or is this more of a Steve's made up his mind? He'll let us know.
It was more Steve's going to have to come to us.
Yeah.
JR was working hard. JR was working real hard on it. But Vince's feeling was, Steve walked out.
Yeah.
Steve left us. We didn't leave Steve. And if he, if and when Steve wants to come back, we'll listen.
Well, I'm glad it happened. For whatever reasons you're having issues with the business domestically, but international business, boy, it's still through the roof. You guys have 2 sold out shows in January that sell out in hours of them being on sale here in November over in South Korea. And it turns out 24,000 tickets were sold for Japan in 2 hours as well. Is this the era where Vince starts to think, okay, I mean, because here's the thing, like in business, you go where the money is. And so it seems logical that, hey, if we're kind of soft here, but we're hot there, well, let's do more of what works and less of what doesn't, right?
I think we were doing a little bit more, but I think also you're trying to look at the core of your business, and the majority of it is domestically. So, you got to fix that. And I think internationally, when you only go once or twice a year, that's a novelty for people. They want to come out. They don't want to miss it. They want to see it. So yeah, international was good, but you still got to fix, and you still have to figure out domestically what's going to work and get that back on track.
We're 2 weeks out from the pay-per-view at this point, and there's still not been any matches announced for it. The Dudleys are going to be wrestling 3-minute warning and losing in 7 minutes. So after the Dudleys were put back together and get this big pop, it does feel like, well, maybe we're just going to use them to help enhance some other talent. I mean, most of the time when you put a big tag team back together, it feels like they're going to go on another big run. That's not the case for the Dudleys here. Were the live show reactions disappointing, or is it just time?
I think it was just time.
Yeah.
Dudley's been around for a long time. It was just time.
Booker is going to wrestle Chris Jericho. They go to a no decision when Christian and Goldust keep interfering. Meltzer would say people were really into this match, and Nick Patrick did a slow count that wasn't supposed to be slow, and boy, were the fans upset by that. But this was the best Raw match in a few weeks. I know at this point we've seen Chris Jericho in a main event of a WrestleMania, so he is pretty much established. He's a made man, if you will. But we're getting there with Booker. I mean, Booker is going to be a big part of the invasion a year prior. When do you think Vince realized, man, of everybody we got from WCW, Booker's probably going to wind up being the MVP?
I think from day one, but probably the one thing that stood out is Booker going out and doing the back and forth with Rock and the Whoopi Goldberg line and all that. But that Booker could hang. And, Book was one of those guys that, man, he wasn't going to be denied by any, it was like throw anything at him, he was going to knock it out of the park. And that's just kind of the way that Book looks at things. And so when you see that, and time again, you give him things that are challenging and he comes out on the other side. Yeah, I think Book was the top guy right out of the gate.
Yeah. Let's talk about Scott Steiner. We're trying to make him a top guy. And as we said, everyone's debating, is he going to Raw? Is he going to SmackDown? Bischoff and Stephanie are trying to compete essentially for who is going to land the rights for Scott Steiner. And he's calling himself Freakzilla. So Bischoff offers him 10 strippers if he will come on over and work on the Bischoff show. Instead, he leaves with Stephanie McMahon. So the storyline continues. Godfather is going to be released. Meltzer would say he was asked to show up on Raw on December 2nd after he got his last check to be with the Hose and Bischoff and present him to Steiner. And he was told the angle would be for Steiner to beat him up, snub his Hose, and leave with Stephanie, recognizing it was meant as a blow-off to himself and his character on their TV. He held them up for perks like a limo and first-class tickets and whatever he could do to avoid coming, and he got his wish. Listen, I for one think that's pretty smart. Good on you, Godfather. Why show up and get drubbed unless you're going to get taken care of? Any pushback about Godfather's positioning here?
Well, he obviously didn't want to do it, so it's like I think that first of all, we're not going to give in to that kind of stuff. But even if he did, the fact that he didn't want to do it, he wouldn't do it well. So next.
Yeah. Well, up next is Triple H pinning Rob Van Dam in 6.5 minutes. Shawn Michaels is the referee, and Meltzer said it was bad on many levels. Quote, first, Van Dam was so scared of hurting Triple H that he worked like he was wrestling Baba, and boy, did it look bad. Real sad the best worker in the match was the ref. Michaels took every chance to cheat to help Rob Van Dam, including fast counting when Triple H was down and slow counting when RVD was down. So Rob Van Dam's, here in the match, but he's kind of, again, in the background. It's about this Hunter-Shawn storyline. Was Rob Van Dam expressing any displeasure in this? Because it does feel like he has always thought of himself as a top guy, and he had been handled as a top guy in ECW, and he had the crowd with him here, and doesn't really feel like he's probably going to be thrilled with the creation.
So he's working in the top program and he would be upset?
I'm asking. I don't know.
No, I mean, he's working in the top program. He is the top guy. He's working with the top guys in the top program.
Well, this is to essentially build a 3 stages of hell match between Michaels and Hunter at the pay-per-view. SmackDown on December 3rd has a ton of controversy over in Dallas. We'll start with Dawn Marie and Tori Wilson. They have 2 separate Dawn Marie and Tori Wilson lesbian vignettes. In both, and Meltzer would say, not sure which one will air. They say Al Wilson is overseas. Dawn then hits on Tori, talking about how hot she is. Dawn said that while she loves Al, she's more attracted to Tori. And she tells Tori that if Tori does something for her, she'll save her dad and cancel the wedding. In the second version, Dawn invited Tori to her hotel room, and they taped a backstage vignette, which didn't air, of the two making out. So Tori did accept the invitation. Man, lots to unpack here, but the idea that you guys filmed a vignette of them making out but didn't release it almost feels worse. Like, we did that and it's not going to air. What do you remember of this? I mean, obviously it's out of the book of bad ideas, but
No, I mean, why is that out of the book of bad ideas? I don't understand this. It's, you know, in a lot of ways we were ahead of it, and you see, you know, men and women making out on television today, and that's more the norm than anything. And I think that because we did it, it was viewed in bad taste, and it was just, you know, a mirror of society and trying to, you know, do something that was, hey, controversial at the time in 2002. And by God, we've come a long way since then. You know, in 20 years, the whole business, everything, society in general,
the world,
come a long way. The world has come a long way. And we were just looking at, why is it okay, to do this and to do that? But yet, if you want to present a storyline that had characters that weren't your traditional characters, or what the norm in society was, that's bad. I don't know. I'm always torn on that. It's like, it's real. It happens. It's life. It's all around you. You just choose not to look at it. So I think that, some people felt it was too far. I don't know if it was a network. I don't remember, but, thinking that maybe we shouldn't go here, even though it was for the right reasons and to be able to tell a story. So, that's tough. You're damned if you do, and you're damned if you don't.
Speaking of damned if you do, damned if you don't, let's talk about Kurt Angle. We've established he's going to get an e-scope after Armageddon, but first we got to get there. So we're going to have Kurt beat Edge, Benoit, and Eddie in a four-way dance to earn a title shot against the Big Show. They go 25 minutes with a guy here who's going to have to get his knee worked on. At this point, did you know in your mind, hey, we're going with Kurt and Brock at WrestleMania? Do you think we had that mapped out in November?
We did have that as an idea, yes, in November, to take Brock to the next level. Yes, absolutely. And, now you're thinking, is it because you really had Big Show as the option, but everybody's thinking, dream match, the two shooters, blah, blah, blah. Man, it was, to me, that one was a dream match. It was like the Olympic gold medalist against the young stud that is the next big thing. So we'd love to get there. Absolutely. And like to get Kurt healthy to do that. And he was obviously healthy enough to go out and have a hell of a match with a giant and do that. So yeah, we were really hoping that Kurt's recuperative powers, Kurt won an Olympic gold medal with a broken freaking neck.
I hadn't heard that.
Did you know that?
Yeah. Hadn't heard that. I'll have to Google that after the show.
He's a stud. Kurt's a stud. And it's like you figure, okay, if he says he can be back in time and he can be good, then let's do it.
So let's talk a little bit about Albert here. He's going to attack Edge, and he's also going to attack Rey Mysterio to put him out for an upcoming knee surgery. But that seems to be a big issue. Meltzer would write this. The original plan was for Benoit to injure Mysterio, which would set up Mysterio returning for revenge on Benoit at Royal Rumble. At the time, the plan was also to do Angle versus Edge and Show versus Undertaker, with Lesnar in the Rumble and presumably winning to get the title shot. The SmackDown writing team of Heyman, Lagana, and Seth Mates, who is a WWE.com writer who's already off the writing team for SmackDown, pitched for Matt Hardy to get the spot instead of Benoit. This would change the Rumble main to Angle versus Benoit, and that was the plan a week earlier, as Hardy pinning Mysterio on the Thanksgiving SmackDown was to start his push and set up the singles match the next week, where Matt would take out the knee. This would have also set up Edge versus Matt as a grudge match for Armageddon, and this was actually scripted, and the wrestlers were aware of it on the afternoon of December 3rd. So then Albert's been given a little bit of a push on Velocity, And after his losing streak was the plan, now he's somehow going to get involved with The Undertaker. Once The Undertaker returns, and that's why he's been in a holding pattern for now, Johnny Ace pitches Vince on Tuesday afternoon to change the whole scenario, put Albert in the spot, and figuring it would give Albert some steam leading to the Undertaker program. Vince agreed, which at the time was very controversial, with people seeing it as Vince picking an uncharismatic guy who's huge for a spot above a guy who's smaller, but people talk about. And apparently Matt Hardy was furious when he got the word. Whether that was the case or not, there's fear among some people that Matt would walk out of the tapings based on his reaction, and he even wrote something on his website that if you know the backstory, he was addressing it, talking about how much he would have loved to have been able to do a program with Edge and Mysterio without revealing that was the plan and it was snatched away from him. A lot to unpack here. Do you remember Matt Hardy being upset? And do you remember Johnny Ace advocating for Albert to get the shot?
I don't think it was just Johnny Ace. I think the people were looking at new and looking at, okay, is there somebody else other than Matt that works in that? And if we are going to go with Undertaker and Albert at WrestleMania, then he needs some steam and he needs to do something, and it ain't gonna happen overnight. So of course Matt's upset because he's thinking he's going to do one thing and then he's doing something else and somebody else is in that spot. But that's the business. That's life. It's like the guy at work that says, I'm due for a promotion. I should get this promotion.
Right.
And somebody else gets the promotion. They're mad. They're upset because they think they should get the promotion. That's just life. Deal with it, get over it, be professional. I don't think it's professional to go on your website or go tell people, oh, this is what they were going to do and they screwed me.
Right.
That's unprofessional, but you have it every day in business. I should, Conrad, yeah. I should be the top loan officer. I should promote me to vice president.
Right.
And you promote somebody else because they work harder or because they fit what you're looking for in that position better than, doesn't mean the other person's not good.
Right.
Doesn't mean the other person's not deserving. It just means in that particular situation for that choice, you chose someone else. And it happens every single day in business.
Well, Michael Hayes is able to help calm down Mr. Hardy. And I guess several people, according to Dave.
Hey, Matt, come here. Anyway.
I guess several people try to talk to Vince about the situation. I think Edge spoke up for Matt Hardy. Even Rikishi was pretty vocal about wanting it to be Hardy. And I guess he has heat with Albert because at a recent house show, Albert legit knocked Rikishi out with a stiff kick. That wasn't the planned finish, but Rikishi's unconscious. So Albert gets the win. And Rikishi's pretty hot about that, I guess. Do you remember there being some heat on Albert as a result of this decision? Because I don't think for a minute that Albert intentionally knocked Rikishi out. And it's not as if Albert himself got to decide creative. This was very much a Vince McMahon decision. But that doesn't sometimes keep guys from saying, oh, I don't like that guy because, and he kind of didn't do anything here.
Of course. And that is the situation because it's like, well, I'm going to hate the guy versus hate the situation.
Hate the decision.
Yeah. Yeah. It's shit happens, man. And I don't know that, okay. Albert knocked Rikishi out. Again, I doubt that was intentional.
Right.
And I think that, when you judge on that, and we do a lot of times because it's, man, you get somebody, your body, you're trusting someone and you get hurt. That's, you don't want to trust them anymore.
Right.
That now gets you in a point where it's like, okay, I don't want to do this anymore. But I think Albert was, kind of along the lines of new, let's try different, and let's do something else.
I gotta ask, do you remember there being hurt feelings or quote unquote heat, brother, between Johnny Ace and Matt Hardy over this?
I have no idea. I'm sure Matt was probably upset with Johnny and blamed Johnny because you never want to blame yourself, so blame somebody else. And if it was John's idea and he heard that, I definitely could see him being upset with John.
I know you were saying about Albert, hey, it was time for new. What was it about Albert's look that appealed to Vince?
Uniqueness. Originally, it's funny. I don't know if we ever told this. Maybe we have, but originally when Albert was going to come in, he was going to come in as George the Animal Steel Jr. It's is George Jr. And man, George the Animal Steel did big business for Vince's dad, did big business for Vince, and was a tremendous character that people believed. Big, hairy, nasty looking, and I think that there was always in the back of Vince's mind, that this big bastard, he's big, he's unique looking. There was a uniqueness to him that you just didn't, he didn't look like the next guy. So, he hopefully you could get him to be an attraction.
Let's jump into it here. We got Batista now. He's going to be out here working with Rob Van Dam. Going to beat him by DQ. Takes all of 2 minutes and 41 seconds. So Rob Van Dam is dead. They've killed him.
Yeah, he's just deader than shit. He never did anything after this. Dead, buried.
So let's talk about another young upstart, Jeff Hardy, who The Undertaker made a huge single star the year before. Triple H is going to come out and destroy him with 2 pedigrees, pin him. Dead as dirt. 4 minutes.
Dead, yeah, just horrible. Dead. Never did anything in the business.
I mean, just double.
Dead.
No, I agree.
Never did anything after that. Yeah, just dead.
Hunter and his friends just running roughshod.
Yeah.
Flair cuts a promo like Ric Flair here, and Meltzer would say it's the best promo on this show in months. It's all about him cutting a promo, as you see there, and hopefully you're watching along on YouTube at somethingtowrestle.com. This is a big moment here. And of course, we would know 6 years later, they would be doing something similar, and it's going to be Ric Flair's swan song for the WWE. But Shawn was visibly touched, or so it seemed on camera here, that his childhood idol was sort of passing the torch to him, even if maybe it came 10 years too late. But Flair said that now Triple H and Shawn have to step aside. Flair did get Michaels over as being relevant today and a baby face and blah, blah, blah. I just love this moment here. And I could imagine Shawn growing up a big Ric Flair fan. He was thrilled to be in this spot as well. Fair to say?
Sure he was. Yeah, absolutely. And then, years later to be the guy that should have retired Flair.
Well, we just talked about how 3 minute warning managed to get a win over the Dudleys. Well, now Kane's going to beat them both when he chokeslams Jamal in 2 minutes and 30
seconds. Killed him dead.
Killed him dead.
You lost a match. You lose a match and you are dead.
Well, they were a top debut act a few months ago, and now they're losing handicap matches. Just saying. Now, here's something we can all get excited about. Stacy's here dressed up as Santa's helper, and she does a bunch of double entendres about Tess balls. Well, of course, she's holding blue balls, talking about how she loves to hold his ball.
Christmas decorations.
Yeah, of course. And they wind up making out again. Do you think the audience gave a shit about this? Do you think this was entertaining TV, or is this just to pop the boys and be cute?
I think they gave a shit about Stacy.
Well, I'm not arguing that.
I don't think they necessarily did about Tess, but trying to give Tess some actual human emotion and human feelings. And if, Tess was able to land Stacy, which he did in real life, and people were all going, how in the hell, how does that happen? Then hopefully if she could see something in him, maybe she could bring out whatever that quality is for the rest of the audience to care and to just care in general.
We see Big Show with Michaels having called Triple H out in the parking lot. Shawn Michaels is here, of course, and Hunter's here, and Flair's out there. And Shawn hits Triple H with a shovel, which makes me laugh. Kills Flair dead with a super kick. and they wind up with Michaels jumping off a production truck with an elbow drop onto Triple H into a heavily padded garbage bin. Fans kind of groan at this. I mean, listen, they like stunts, but when we know that it's maybe a little too careful, some folks roll their eyes, and it almost makes me wonder if that's going to be the response. Why do it at all? Were you a fan of these big stunts? I mean, I know if we're going to do them, we have to do them safely. But if we're going to sort of reveal maybe too much of the magic and fans are going to, would you rather we just avoid it completely?
Revealed what magic?
Well, I mean, you just saw they landed on garbage bags filled with shredded paper. I mean, it was heavily padded.
So when you put your shred in a dumpster and it's there and you jump off of a truck into it, because that's not dangerous at all, onto someone in it, that's just horrible.
I guess what I'm saying, Bruce, is other times
here's the thing. This is the other thing that just would get me, is when people will talk about, oh, that was botched and that was screwed up. If it happened, it happened because it was real and because it was live TV. And I always say you can't make a mistake on live TV. If it was live TV, it was meant to happen, and it did happen. And so, like when a boxer throws a punch and they miss the guy they're throwing the punch at because he moves or he's not in the right place where the boxer thought he'd be, is that a botch? Is that a screw up? People go, oh, well, he screwed up there.
Yeah,
it's it's real. We try to do things that reflect what happens, what really happens when you watch an actual wrestling match in the Olympics or at your high school, and somebody tries to go behind and they don't get it. Well, they were supposed to go behind him and get him and take him down. Things don't always work. And I think that we lose that a lot of times when we watch, because people think they're smart and think they know what's supposed to happen. Just let it happen. Why can't, what happens just watching and enjoying? You have to just watch it. Don't analyze it. And don't sit there and go, oh, I wonder how they did that. They did that. He really didn't hit him.
Well, no, I think we get all that, but I mean, you have to admit that we are trying some weird stuff here with Stacey talking about balls and Katie Vick, and I mean, there's some weird stuff. Like, I don't remember.
Katie Vick was horrible.
Yes, we all agree.
Katie Vick was horrible. Nobody argues that. Katie Vick was absolutely god awful. Stacey and Test having a relationship because they had one in real life was an attempt to try and get Test to have a personality and to bring out some traits that, again, as an audience member, we weren't seeing. And frankly, is anybody backstage, we weren't seeing. But you look at it and go, man, she sees something in him.
Right.
You got to have something.
Right.
So let's try and put them together and let's see if we can get it out of him.
Well, let's also explain the burial by Hunter of Jeff Hardy. Jeff Hardy's going to get suspended for showing up late with Just Incredible. And it does seem like, man, we got a lot of problems with some of our mid-card talent. Is this just discontent? Is it the travel? Is it just the grind? Is it lower payoffs because business is down? What would you say?
I would say it was immaturity and unprofessionalism.
Okay.
So okay, Conrad, if you ask your people to come in and work on a holiday when I had a barbecue planned with my family, and I'm mad at you for doing that, so I can just show up late to work.
Buddy, did you think I was justifying it? Why are you being so goddamn?
Well, you're saying that we buried him and that it was because we were making him work every day.
No, I'm not saying that at all. I was asking.
I'm saying that I think it's unprofessional. I think it's just not professional. I think it's
we all agree it's not professional. But I mean, we also probably all agree the hardest part about being a WWE superstar is the travel, right?
There's a lot of hard parts about it. Yeah, getting in the ring every night and risking your body. But here's my point. That's the gig.
Oh, I get it. I'm not arguing
for the gig. If you can't do the gig, then don't do it.
Let's rewind the tape and play the part where I said you guys shouldn't have suspended Matt Hart or Jeff Hardy. I didn't say that. No. I was asking when we see lots of issues with a roster and it starts to feel systemic. Is there discontent? Is morale down? Are people just being worked too hard in their mind for the amount of money they're being paid? Is it just lack of immaturity? Is there substance stuff? Let's not pretend like Jeff Hardy hasn't had substance stuff over the years too. And he shows up late with Just Incredible. I'm not a mathematician, but 2 plus 2, there's a lot of opportunity here for things to go poorly. And
Right.
there's a track record with certain talent. And I'm trying to have a conversation about that.
Well,
Not
no, but my point is when it's just two people, it's not the entire roster showing up late. So it's two people that chose to be unprofessional and not show up to work on time.
Okie doke. Let's talk about how we're starting the Angle Lesnar program. And I mean, at this point, was there any concern about this knee surgery? I mean, it's not necessarily a major surgery, but it's one of those things where you don't really know what you're looking at until you get in there, right? Was there a concern that Angle wouldn't be able to go, or was he Iron Man at that point?
Yes and no. He was Iron Man. And, to me, I'm always concerned. I'm always concerned whenever anybody goes in to have surgery because you just don't know. You don't know if they're going to find something else. And you don't know, man, is that recovery going to be 4 weeks or are you going to get in 3 weeks and re injure it? Now we've got to go and do another surgery. And now you're out for 6 months. And, having had that happen so many times, it's always in the back of your mind. Kurt Angle, was Superman. He was like, if he could have, he probably would have taped it up.
Right.
Just gone on. But, the right thing to do was go in and get that thing scoped. And the feeling was from the experts, from the doctor and from Kurt, who knows his body, that, hey, the scope's going to make you feel a whole hell of a lot better and you will be in a better place after it. So you roll the dice and you hope for the best and you listen to the professionals and you listen to the experts that tell you, oh yeah, he'll be good as new on the other side. And that's what you plan for. You still have a backup plan because you never know.
We briefly talked earlier about, in this Matt Hardy circumstance that the SmackDown writing team, and we even named Lagana and Heyman, and there was another fellow, Seth Mates. Does that name ring a bell? Do you remember Seth Mates?
Yeah, Seth was there for a cup of coffee.
Well, I'll bring it up because it feels as if, and it's even in the Observer, that you guys are going to start interviewing and trying to hire new writers. And it's even written in the Observer that one of the ideas is they'll spend 6 months in Louisville before going to the main roster to sort of learn wrestling concepts. I don't think that ever happened, but do you remember that ever being an idea? Let's send the writers to developmental.
It was actually my idea because I looked at developmental as a place where you could develop writers, you could develop your referees, you could develop a new play-by-play guy, a color analyst. Developmental should be developmental for every aspect of our business.
Right.
So I always wanted to do that. Go down there, make mistakes, learn the business. And if you do well there, then come on up and let's try this. So yeah, I mean, that was something that I've advocated from day one.
Let's talk a little bit about Josh Matthews. He's going to come in here. We first were introduced to him on Tough Enough. Now he's going to debut as a SmackDown announcer. How does Josh get the spot here? And what'd you think of his work? We haven't spent a lot of time talking about Josh Matthews as an announcer.
I like Josh. Josh was great backstage. He was young, had a good look, and I thought he did a good job. I thought that he did a really good job. Wasn't really crazy about his play-by-play,
right?
But at the same time, that's just something, man, you got to learn. That just takes time, and there's no other way to learn it than on the job and get out there and do it and get a feel for it and do it every single week. But I thought that Josh was good. I thought Josh did a good job backstage. He was the right size. He knew the business. Didn't really have an ego, and was able to, do whatever needed to be done.
Well, what needs to be done for Albert is a bit of a name change. He's going to go by A-Train, and he's now going to be paired with Paul Heyman. Talk me through the idea of coming up with A-Train. Is that somebody in the room? Is that creative services? Is that just a backstage nickname?
I think that it was just looking for a different descriptor for him, other than Albert. It's just kind of Albert. No offense to anybody named Albert, but when that's your name, it's like, the name came from Vince Russo. That was Prince Albert. You knew what Prince Albert is, right?
Yes, I do. But why don't you
Okay.
tell our listeners?
Well, no, it's a piercing in your genitalia area that they call a Prince Albert.
Why don't you show us yours right fast?
No, I'm not.
Can we see Jacob's ladder?
That's inappropriate, unprofessional, Conrad.
To show, we're trying to learn, Bruce. It's called show and tell.
No.
I mean, it's kind of an endorsement spot for Manscaped too. I mean, what's the holdup?
No.
Okay.
You show them yours.
I don't have one. You know that.
You took it out? When'd you take it out?
When I got married.
Oh, I thought that anyway.
Let's talk about.
So Albert wasn't. It's like Albert, and looking for a new name for him. I don't know if we got it from Creative Services or it was just something done in the room. Really don't.
So now we've got Big Show and A-Train teaming up to beat Angle and Edge. And Meltzer would point out, I should point out that after feuding much of the year, including a hair match and never doing one angle together, Angle and Edge are teaming together with not an angle or interview whatsoever to get them together. That's a great point. Back in May and Judgment Day in Nashville, we had a hair versus hair match, and now these guys are a tag team, and there's really no explanation.
Sure, there is.
Okay.
They had common enemies in Big Show and Train. Why else would you team together? Because we both hate the same people. So Dave Silva and I teamed together.
Oh, I love that. Hey, let's talk about Paul Bearer. He does an interview, and it's not very kind to the company. He says while he had praised WWE while working for them for how well they took care of him and what a great company it was to work for, they were not nearly so kind now. Quote, they were not as understanding as you might have been led to believe. I only received 2 calls from anyone in WWE management the entire time my wife was fighting cancer. Both calls were made by Stephanie McMahon. I only received a handful of calls from my so-called friends. Undertaker, and I guess the two had a big falling out here, may have called twice, but that was after I told the world he never cared. It's out of sight, out of mind in wrestling. As far as payroll is concerned, you must understand I was under a guaranteed money contract. They had to pay me. It wasn't a favor by any means. I didn't have insurance, and Diana's treatments were close to $100,000. That cleaned me out. Did anybody offer me any assistance? Please. All that glitters is not gold, friends. And he also said that McMahon and his stooges took every opportunity to make his life a living hell as far as his weight was concerned. He said he starved himself and dropped 100 pounds in 5 months, was brought back to TV, and after a few months was taken off TV again. Of course, at this point, unfortunately, he had gained all that weight back and more. Were you aware that Bear had hard feelings? And I didn't know until doing research for this that maybe him and Undertaker had a big falling out.
Yeah, it was unfortunate. It really is. And sometimes when things are going on in your life and that, you think that everybody knows everything about you and you think that everyone should come to your aid. And man, Paul left my name out in that because I did call. And I was in constant contact with Paul because I could relate to a wife going through cancer issues.
Yes.
And we did talk often. And one of the things, as far as business went with Paul and as far as Paul in general was, Paul, you put on a lot of weight and you need to lose some weight for your health to take care of you so that you can take care of Diana, so that you could be there for her and be strong for her. And you need to take care of you. And don't go downhill, man. Don't sit here and put on more weight and we'll help you. We offered to help him and say, look, man, we'll get you a program. We'll get you a nutritionist. We'll get you a trainer, whatever it is that you want to do. Paul chose not to do that. And again, he was upset and he was bitter at this time because he felt that the world was against him. And again, I could relate because he was sitting there and the person that he loved most in this world was suffering. And he was suffering with her and for her as much as he could. Paul, man, he loved his wife just unbelievably. That was his life. Diana was his life. And I think that, he was mad at the world because it's unfair when cancer goes and inhabits the body of someone that you love. It's just unfair. And you lash out at the world. Been there, done that. So I just think I think he was upset with that, and I give him a pass for it. I think that he, felt if you called him once a week, you should have called twice. You called him once a month, you should have called twice.
All right.
No matter what anyone did for him, it was wrong. It's like the going to you and say, hey man, you need to lose weight or you need to do this. That's for your own good. It's not for anybody else.
Right.
That's for you. You need to take better care of yourself. And we're offering to help you in that endeavor. He didn't want to help himself. And that's the sad part of it. But there were those. I know Michael kept in touch with him. I know I kept in touch with him. And I want to say I called him at least once a week. Again, we were going through the same journey at the same time. So it was just sad.
Let's talk about the show. We get 342,000 buys here for Armageddon 02. That is an upgrade over the year prior, which was the Undisputed title tournament with Jericho coming out on top. And it's only 4,000 less buys than Survivor Series. So as critical as we may have been in the Observer, Michaels and Hunter is a draw here. But unfortunately, it gets a 59.6% thumbs down in the fan poll. It's the final show of the year in Fort Lauderdale. And Meltzer would say it was apropos of the year as a whole. He would say it was much like watching WCW at the end. There's some good stuff underneath. It had a surprise. They built up more than the wrestling that was so awful it killed the crowd. In a main event between two wrestlers who were big stars in their day, but are from another era. Let's jump into it. First match, Booker T and Goldust are going to win the Raw Tag Team titles from Chris Jericho and Christian. It's a four-way with the Dudleys, Lance Storm, and William Regal as well. The first two eliminations are fairly abrupt. And once we get to it, it's just a traditional tag. And Meltzer would say very good. He gave it 3.5 stars. It gets plenty of time, 16 minutes and 43 seconds. As a reminder, a year prior, Chris Jericho was winning the Undisputed title, beating Steve Austin and The Rock in the same night. Now he's dropping the tag straps.
He should have just held them forever.
I didn't argue he should have held it forever.
Yeah, I mean, again, he fell from grace. He was dead and buried here and never did anything after that. It was, I thought it was good. I enjoyed the hell out of Booker T and Goldust as a tag team. I thought they were fun together, man. It was, here's an example of two guys taking every single bit of material that they had, making the most of it and making it fun and making you forget. It was really good stuff.
Let's talk a little bit about Edge and A-Train. Edge is going to beat A-Train in 7 minutes and 12 seconds. Meltzer would say the crowd was quiet. The match was well worked, but this push of A-Train doesn't look like it's a good idea at this point. The finish was one of those bad ones with A-Train hitting Edge in the knee with a chair for the DQ. The crowd hated the finish, and Edge got some revenge, nailing A-Train with 7 chair shots. Is this the best way to build up a monster?
It's one way. Look, the bottom line is that, A-Train wasn't the guy. He just wasn't. But that's hindsight. That's hindsight is 2020. When you look back at it, I don't think it was the time. I don't think he was the guy. And we were trying something. We were trying to build somebody and trying to, man, do something. You know, if you, here's the funny thing. I think if you hadn't have done anything, the people would say, "Ah, we're not getting anything new. You got A-Train sitting there. Do something with him, big bastard." So, you know, yes, it was trying to do something and trying to do something new. Did it work? No.
Let's all take a moment of silence and think what could have been with A-Train.
You don't need to take a whole moment.
Had he just
It
known
won't
about
take that long.
All right, so Chris Benoit and Eddie Guerrero are up next. 16 minutes and 47 seconds. The announcers immediately try to put this over as a match to determine who's in line for a title shot, which was never actually hyped on TV. But still, what a match, man. Two of the all-time greats, especially in this era. People were just lined up to see this, as well they should have been. Plenty of time, 16:47, and Benoit gets his hand raised. Of course, it's going to be the crossface that gets it done. 3 3/4 stars. We know in just a few years these guys are both going to be world champs, but would you have predicted that was their trajectory at this point in 02? Would you have thought they're going to be there in a couple of years?
Yes, I would have. Big fans of both's work, and yes, definitely would have, because they had it. Eddie, you know, more so because Eddie had all of it, and Eddie had the personality. No matter what you gave him, he made it work every time.
We want to remind everybody that Stephanie is more than just an on-screen character here. Meltzer has this to say. One ego that killed the show was Stephanie McMahon. When UPN wouldn't air her produced masterpiece of the build-up leading to a lesbian kiss, they had to move it to pay-per-view. And over the past week, particularly on SmackDown, the video masterpiece became more important than the wrestling matches. But it wasn't a masterpiece. It was amongst the sleaziest and worst acted angles in the history of the company, and kicked off the worst 45 minutes of pay-per-view from the company this year. Meltzer would say the show died from here. Dawn Marie came out to a largely dead response. She did a long promo to build up the tape, and they showed a long tape which had Dawn Marie taking Tori Wilson's leather jacket off and her dress off, and the two kissed. Al Wilson freaked out, begged Dawn Marie to stop the tape. At first she wouldn't, but then she agreed to. I think the idea was this would turn Al Wilson heel because people didn't get to see more, but the heat wasn't on Al Wilson. It was on the company for one of the worst segments in history. Was it one of the worst segments in history?
No, I just go back to everything I said before.
And aired finally on pay-per-view here. Do you remember thinking this is going to be a bust, or did you think fans would dig it and then they just kind of didn't?
I don't know, man. You know, again, you've got to do some controversial things sometimes, and I just think it was more than anything ahead of its time. And I don't know that, first of all, TV executives and the audience in general, I don't think that they were definitely ready for it. It was a departure from a lot of things, and it was, as Jim Cornette would say, deader than Kelsey's nuts.
Let's talk about
Kelsey's got some dead nuts.
I think Kane does too. Dave Bautista is going to beat Kane in 6 minutes and 38 seconds. Meltzer would say this was not the way to follow that segment. The crowd set a new level of dead for this one. Ric Flair tried to be the whole match, but couldn't come close to saving it. And Meltzer would say this was the wrong guy for Batista's first program, but I do understand the idea. You make a star by beating an established star, and he was going to do so here. But it just didn't work. Fans weren't with it. Do you think this was just, is this in the death spot after that segment?
No, I think that Dave was greener than goose shit, and it, you know, again, man, we're in a transitional period here where you got guys that may not be ready for prime time, but they're going to be headlining in a year or two. Got to start somewhere, and you know, we're in that phase right now. So, was Dave ready for this? Probably not. but who else was and who would have been better? And if you'd say, okay, well, give me, a guy that had been there forever, give me Matt Hardy or Jeff Hardy, then people would have said, I want something new. That's what it was.
Well, the rating in the Observer is a dud. It does finish with Batista's sit out power bomb, and up next, you said everybody starts somewhere. You got to get these guys out here because we believe in them. They're going to be top guys. Well, how about John Cena comes out with Bling Bling Buchanan?
Bling Bling.
His
bling Bling.
His third name change in 2 weeks, and Meltzer would say Cena appears to be doing a great job with a bad gimmick. Yeah, to say the least. Cena was not going to be held down. A famous wrestler once says the cream always rises to the top. John Cena rose to the top. He was the cream, was he not?
Yes, he was. And again, it just goes to show that it's what's inside and the delivery. And I thought that the gimmick and John's performance were A+.
The next match shows you what a warrior Trish Stratus is. Not enough people talk about this or her in that regard. It's a 3-way with Victoria retaining over Jacqueline and Trish Stratus. But in the walkthrough the night
Wait a minute, the kiss is bad, but the 3-way's okay?
Will you stop? The previous night, they're doing a walkthrough of the match in Fort Myers, Florida. And Trish winds up having her face sat on, and it fractures her nose. She works this match with a fractured nose. And the finish would see Victoria hit her with a belt shot and then pin Jacqueline, who Stratus had laid out. Meltzer gave it a dud, so maybe the work wasn't all that great. But kudos and props for Trish, who I think a lot of people probably assumed when she first came in, oh, she's just another pretty face. Boy, she proved that to be wrong, did she not?
Man, Trish, from day one, I think people looked at it, oh, she's a fitness model. She doesn't belong in the business. Trish worked her ass off to learn this business. She was just another pretty face from the fitness model space that wanted to be in this business and was willing to do whatever it took and put in the hours and put in the time to get better. And once she got to a point where she was at the top, she continued to get better. And, people ever, and I'm not, that would knock her work or anything. It's like, man, you don't have a clue.
Right.
Because again, Trish did everything all the time and busted her ass to prove to the naysayers, but also just to prove to herself and to be the best. She was willing to sacrifice to be the best, and she was very good. She turned into, a hell of a talent, and I'll take that attitude and that drive, any day of the week. Extremely tough. And, the other thing about it was, let me think. Did Trish bring in Lisa or did Lisa bring in Trish? I think Trish brought in Lisa, Lisa Verone. And, again, she was another one from the fitness models that came in and trained and busted her ass to be in the business and do whatever she needed to do. So, and what needs to be said about Jackie, holy cow. Jackie's just magnificent. So it was, to me, 3 of the best, but yeah, Trish was a tough one. She wasn't going to let, please break my face. I can go.
So Kurt Angle is up next. He's going to win the SmackDown title over Big Show in 12 minutes and 36 seconds. Meltzer would say this was the best laid out match of the show and it had the most heat, but it was still Angle's worst pay-per-view match this year because Show gassed really fast. It gets 2.25 stars. Of course, Brock Lesnar is going to be involved here. He's going to run out and deliver an F5 on a totally gassed Show and nearly lose him. And that allows Angle to make the pin. There was an A-Train run in. There's Paul Heyman stuff here. There's lots of storyline, but the result is Kurt Angle is your new champ. What do you think of the pairing of Kurt Angle and Big Show? I know they say Styles makes fights, but on paper, I could see how that one might be a little challenging, no?
Kurt and Big Show, actually, I thought had good chemistry. And Kurt was able to adapt and work with big men. He did great with Undertaker. I thought he did great with the Big Show as well. And Kurt made it work, and it's believable. You know why it's believable? Because it's real. And
Right.
Kurt could pretty much do whatever he wanted to Big Show, but yet he treated Big Show like the giant that he is. And to me, man, I thought it was great. It told a good story. And, you know, Kurt made Big Show. Was Big Show gas? Sure he was. But that's what happens sometimes. Go on out there and try and do it. And tell me if you're not gassed. Shit, I get gassed watching it.
Well,
Just saying.
listen, this accomplishes a lot. We get Lesnar back on track. We get the title back on Kurt Angle. Kurt Angle is now a babyface, even though he'd been a heel for most of the year. So we're checking a lot of boxes. And now the reason we're here, and maybe the reason this thing was successful on pay-per-view, Shawn Michaels and Triple H. Meltzer would say they attempted to recreate the fantastic 2 out of 3 falls epic that Shawn and Hunter, or that Hunter and Austin had at No Way Out 2001. A series of 3 matches that goes 45 minutes that may have been the finest performance of Hunter's career. But nearly 2 years later, it's a different man in the ring. Hobbled by a deep thigh bruise and a painful Charlie horse in his right leg, Triple H put on a gutsy performance, doing 3 matches out there for nearly 40 minutes and regaining the Raw title from Michaels. He finished by beating Michaels in a ladder match to end the show, which will go down as the most disappointing ladder match in WWE history. But their performance was questionable in many ways, and when the disappointing show was over, it really felt like egos had engulfed the company. The match came across like an independent garbage match where wrestlers were breaking tables and they were using barbed wire boards on fire, not to accentuate the brutality, but because physically they couldn't do anything else. The only difference is in an indie garbage match, the timing of when to do the moves usually isn't as good. The crowd reactions to the spots is usually better. And usually in those cases, both guys are doing stunts instead of just one. Whether it was Triple H not letting anyone know how badly he was hurt, his insistence to go on with a lengthy match being ill-advised, risking further injury, and at the same time, killing the show. But there was a world title to win, ending a 1-month scenario where he and Michaels traded the belt that was booked in the absolute worst possible manner for the company's future. 2 guys past their prime succeeded in burying the rest of the roster as the championship contenders while they drew poor ratings and a poor buy rate. The company still hasn't realized that most of the current fan base never saw Michaels, unlike Hulk Hogan, Steve Austin, or Ric Flair. He was not the legend to the masses that they want to remember him as. So, man, Meltzer is just dumping on this in a big way. I couldn't disagree more. I don't think these guys were past their prime. I did enjoy the match. I did think it went a little too long. And as a reminder, it's like 3 stages of hell. So we've got rest periods between the matches, and it's a street fight to get us started. So there's tons of weapons, and then there's a cage match, and then there's a ladder match. And is this too much stuff in the same show? I mean, I guess that's maybe the criticism is instead of having one quote unquote gimmick match, we've got 3. Is that too much? What say you, Bruce?
Not a fan.
Yeah.
The other thing that I think is misconstrued a lot of times is time. That the more time, the better the match. And I couldn't disagree with that more, because I think that the quality of the match, the quality of the story, usually shorter is better. Leave them wanting more, no matter what it is. And just because you have a 45-minute match or an hour match when you could have accomplished the same thing in 20 minutes, I think not in this particular case, but it definitely sure could have been 30 minutes.
Right.
But the gimmicks, it was too many gimmicks on top. It was a gimmick on top of a gimmick on top of a gimmick.
Yes.
So you just, I especially those 2 guys didn't need all that. They just didn't need it. Again, in hindsight, with all the injuries that Triple H was dealing with at the time, probably shouldn't have been in the ring.
Right.
But at the same time, he was like, no, we're going to gut it out. We're going to do it. I think that was part of the issue is that no, you're not going to know that I'm injured. I'm going to work through this thing, and Sean would take care of him. I don't know. Again, it's hindsight, and it was looking at what we had at the time, and man, you just didn't need all those gimmicks. But it happened, and it was a ballsy performance.
No doubt.
It really was on both guys' part, because you just had two of the greatest workers in the business going out and doing a stunt show, and they especially those two guys didn't need all that. And I felt that coming back, Sean just coming back, and putting the title on Sean was a game day decision of like, hey, wouldn't this be cool? Knowing where we eventually wanted to go, and it was, but it was a fun in the moment, feel good thing. Madison Square Garden, the Elimination Chamber, and blah blah blah. But it wasn't, it just wasn't a great match. It was just a match. And I think that it didn't stink,
Right.
but it was just too much. I think we could have done it with a whole lot less.
Well, let's talk
better.
Let's talk about the finish. Triple H does the third worst pedigree of his career, according to Meltzer. It looked like working this match was torture for him and torture for those watching it. Triple H would climb the ladder literally with one leg and the other just hanging. Michaels super kicked Triple H out of the ring and went to climb. And just as he got there, Triple H recovered, tipped the ladder over, and Michaels flew over the top rope, crashing into the tables. You see that visual there if you're watching on YouTube. And Triple H climbing the ladder here with one leg gets it done. He grabs the belt in 5 minutes and 40 seconds of their third match. As you said, Sean had only held the title here for a month. When it's over, here's what we're trying to build towards. Brock Lesnar versus Kurt Angle for the WWE title at WrestleMania. The Rock versus Stone Cold at WrestleMania. Hulk Hogan versus Mr. McMahon at WrestleMania. Shawn Michaels versus Chris Jericho at WrestleMania. And of course, Triple H against Booker T at WrestleMania. And out of the 5 main matches on that show, Rock, Austin, Hogan, and Vince are all not on this card. And I'm not going to say, a lot of fans, and we're not here to debate this today, say that, well, this is when the part-timers started to take over. I don't know that I would agree with that. I think you always make special exceptions for the Rocks, the Hogans, the Austins, the Vinces. But still, it might be hard to watch this show and know you're going to get that WrestleMania. I think we could probably guess Brock Lesnar, Kurt Angle, but the rest of the stuff, maybe not so much here. Did you have all that mapped out here, or is that going to evolve as we get closer?
Yeah, pretty much. Pretty much we had WrestleMania pretty laid out at that point. So we knew where we wanted to go and get there. You didn't have, for example, you didn't have Steve full time. You didn't have Steve in that position. You didn't want to see Hulk every month. So, but yes, the main matches we definitely had.
Talk to me about not Shawn Michaels, but Rob Van Dam. You said that, we're not burying him and he's in a prime spot and blah, blah, blah. He's not on this show at all. Is that a little odd? Weird?
After all the names that you just listed that weren't on the show? No, it's not weird. You can't put everybody on every show. And you should.
Hogan wasn't with the company at the time. Rock's gone. Austin's gone. So, it was really just Vince who was there.
Yeah, the other ones could have been there.
James Penny wants.
You just don't need to put everybody on every show.
James Penny wants to know, when I think of Sean as the champion, I think of the Winged Eagle belt. What did you think of him with the big gold belt? To me, it looked out of place.
It did. To me, the big gold belt in WWE in general looked out of place. But yeah, I like the Winged Eagle, and you know what belts I like. I like the old NWA belt and the Winged Eagle one pretty much. I like the one that they have now as well.
Francis Reyes says, when you put Batista with Rick, was this you setting the seed for Evolution, or was it to give him someone to travel with and learn from on the road?
100% to give him somebody to teach him on the road, be able to be at ringside to mentor him, to help him, understand what to come next. And Batista can roll out. And Rick was actually, the manager. Rick was actually, the mentor at that part for everything. He was helping him with his promos and helping him with his in-ring work on the job.
Nathan Cassara wants to know who was coming up with the pay-per-view stage setups back in those days. The fire and flames at this pay-per-view were epic.
I don't know. I don't know if that was Bandit or if that was Jason by this time. So I really don't know.
GJ Refill says, considering that Kane was still wearing a mask and that likely prevented him from being able to call or dictate spots as well in their matches, it leads to the question, how big's Batista's dick? Still thinking about it? You can just show me with your hands if you want. All right, next week, Bruce, we're going to be talking about a second set of Armageddon coverage. We'll take a look at 15 years ago, Armageddon 2007. Edge and Undertaker are challenging Batista for the world title in a triple threat match. Chris Jericho has made his return to the company. He's challenging Randy Orton for the WWE Championship. Finlay will be taking on the Great Khali. Can't wait to talk about that one. And Jeff Hardy and Triple H are squaring off in a number one contenders match. Meanwhile, Mr. Kennedy is getting a big push. He's going to be taking on Shawn Michaels. I love talking about these throwback shows, and we'll go from 20 years ago this week to 15 years ago next week. So, Bruce, let's get ready. We're going into the future, and we hope you guys are digging the future of Something to Wrestle. If you think we've earned it, throw us a 5-star review. It really helps everything that we're doing, and we greatly appreciate it. Apple Podcasts or anywhere you enjoy your podcast, throw us that 5-star rating. We'd greatly appreciate it. Hit the like button, throw us a subscribe, and we would love to have your interactions. It's easy to interact with the show. It's at Pritchard Show. I am at Hey, it's Conrad. You can find us on Facebook at Pritchard Show, on Twitter and Instagram at Pritchard Show, but Something to Wrestle on Facebook. Speaking of Something to Wrestle, we've got video now, boys and girls. Take a look. You can actually see the show with some visual aids, if you will, and Bruce's goofy mug trying to chastise me every chance he gets over at somethingtowrestle.com. We're trying to grow our YouTube, so hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, turn your notifications bell on, and tell the wrestling fan in your life about Something to Wrestle. Because here's the deal. I can understand that some of these shows, they go over 2 hours, might be a little daunting to the wrestling fan in your life. Get some little bite-sized samples and recommend them to your friends at somethingtowrestle.com. This was a fun show, Bruce. Did we cover it all? Did we get it all out here for 2002 today?
We got it all. And you know what time it is now? Viva Las Vegas. Viva Las Vegas. I don't know the rest of the song. I just know the Viva Las Vegas.
Well, I hope you have fun, bud. I've had a lot of fun in Las Vegas with you and without you, and I'm going to be batching it here for a few days.
What? You and I could actually talk about the fun that we've had in Vegas.
I mean, I'm for it.
Yeah, no, I mean, everybody was there. We had a lot of fun.
We did have a lot of fun. And you know what's crazy? It was 4 years ago. This time of year, 4 years ago.
Isn't that crazy?
Where's the time go, man?
I still laugh. There was one night, I think we were at Vic and Anthony's, and the waitress came over and said, so do you guys want any dessert? Do you want to look at the desserts? And you were like, well, yes. And still to this day, I every once in a while, when I remember that, I do that when they come to the table. Ask if you guys got any room for desserts? Because we didn't eat a lot of our food, but yet, by God, we wanted that dessert.
Well, here's the thing. Everybody who's ever been to Vic and Anthony's knows that there's 2 sort of hidden things on the menu that are unbelievable that they don't talk about. Cream corn, of all things, at Vic and Anthony's are unbelievable. I don't know why, but it is. And the cheesecake. It maybe is the best cheesecake in Vegas. Maybe. And my wife, as you know, cheesecake fanatic. Like, I don't even get her birthday cake. She gets a cheesecake.
That's a good thing. Nothing wrong with that.
When I drag her to Vic and Anthony's, she acquiesces to the cream corn's really good. as long as we get the cheesecake. It's kind of a deal we have. And did you know that if you go to Fogo de Chao out there, they got the bread out there that looks like a penis head?
Yeah, I won't be going to Fogo de Chao.
The bread looks like a penis head. All right, boys and girls, we'll be back next week. Armageddon 2007, right here on Something to Wrestle with. Bruce Pritchard.
Rock on!